All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. Since 2000, the Philadelphia Eagles have had, Jeffrey Lurie in their front office in one form or fashion. Right now, currently, he is running things for this front office. Um, and since that time, since the year of 2000, the Eagles have only had five losing seasons while also claiming their one and only Super Bowl title, as well as making three appearances in the big game. And with Roseman currently calling the shots in that front office, he continues to kill the NFL draft, which is why the Eagles continue to stay in contention. Now, just this past weekend at the NFL draft, Philadelphia enjoyed three phenomenal days as they were able to add more depth as well as more impact players. Now, like I said the other day before the draft, the teams picking later in round number one always tend to have guys fall into their lap that should have gone a little earlier in the round. And the Eagles, they sat back and waited, in round number one. And then we saw an aggressive Roseman throughout the rest of the draft proceedings. And honestly, the Eagles, in my opinion, hit it out of the park over the weekend. Now, we know that last season, Philadelphia's pass defense was a weakness, which, resulted in Roseman drafting Toledo cornerback, Quinyon Mitchell, 22nd overall in round number one. But then I love the aggressiveness from Howie Roseman. We saw him trade up with the Washington Commanders of all teams in round number two to draft Cooper DeJean out of Iowa. And of course, this is a very versatile defensive back. Is he going to be a corner? Is he going to be a safety? We have to wait and see. But I guarantee you, Philadelphia is going to find plenty of ways to get a guy with that much talent on the field. DeJean really should have been a first round pick, but of course, the injuries last year in Iowa definitely scared off some teams. DeJean, is just one diamond in the rough, so to speak, for Philadelphia. You look at them, they took Clemson running back Will Shipley in round number four to give them more depth at that position. Of course, Philadelphia just signed former New York Giants running back Saquon Barkley last month. You also have the likes of Kenneth Gainwell in that backfield as well. And then, of course, in the fifth round for Philadelphia, they took linebacker Jeremiah Trotter Jr. He was just one of the three selections that they had in round number five. And of course, for Eagles fans, if that name sounds familiar, Jeremiah Trotter, senior, once upon a time, was a darn good linebacker for the Philadelphia Eagles. You think about when the Eagles started to get things turned around under former head coach Andy Reid, and of course that Jim Johnson defense. Trotter was one of those guys who was front and center and helping that turnaround, along with him, the likes of Brian Dawkins and Hugh Douglas, just to name a few. And now his son is joining the Philadelphia Eagles. And of course, if you've watched Clemson play defensively over the last couple of years, Jeremiah Trotter was one of the best players on their team, and he was also one of the best defensive players, regardless of the position in the ACC. Also, in the fifth round, you bring in more speed when you bring in Texas A&M wide receiver Anaya Smith to the equation, and you just look at the Eagles and what they did, just right up and down the line. 8 trades, okay, were made by the Philadelphia Eagles over the weekend as they simply went out there and got their guys, and that's a credit to Howie Roseman. Why? Because he treats draft picks like currency. And at the end of the day, if he sees a player that he wants, he's going to go out there and get him. And at the end of the day, you got to be aggressive. And to quote a former Philadelphia Eagles player, of course, Herm Edwards, you play to win the game. That's all. That's all that matters. But it's all about winning at the draft. Why? Because the Eagles, okay, I know some people are going to say, well, they fell short of the Super Bowl a couple of years ago. They, really didn't do well coming down the stretch last season, and they were one and done in the postseason, courtesy of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I totally get it. But again, they're in contention, and that's a good problem to have. And this draft weekend period is a reason why the Eagles stay in contention because it's all about depth. It's all about finding replacements for guys. Of course, two longtime staples for the Philadelphia Eagles just retired this past season. You got Fletcher Cox on that defensive line, and then, of course, Jason Kelsey, the all pro center. Very difficult to replace those guys and what they meant to this Eagles team for so many years. But it started prior to this season as far as the Eagles looking to find some replacements, bringing in the likes of Jordan Davis, bringing in the likes of Jalen Carter on that defensive line. And, you bring in a Mekhi Becton, another offensive tackle from the New York Jets. It's one of those where it's all about finding that depth, and the Philadelphia Eagles continue to do that. But getting back to this draft, you sell tickets on day one with the guys that you draft, but then you build your team on days 2 and days 3. And that's why it's so important. It's not just about Roseman, it's all about the scouting department as well, because these guys are out there all year long finding these guys, trying to see who can and cannot fit into the Philadelphia Eagles system. But when it's all said and done, the Eagles had a phenomenal draft. They continue to have good drafts. And this is why they consistently are in Super Bowl contention. So, like I said, last year did not end on a positive note for the Philadelphia Eagles. They're looking to right some wrongs this offseason. And I expect the Eagles to once again be the team to beat in the NFC East, in my opinion, and to be one of the teams in top contention to win the NFC and, of course, get to the Super Bowl. But to have those aspirations, it starts with what you do at the NFL draft. And like I said before, success was written all over the Philadelphia Eagles this past weekend in Detroit. So, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank all of you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take this time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you haven't already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on the X formerly known as Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it'll be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. Now you can check it out. Drop a line and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin, and I am signing off. And I'm saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.